The arena's collapse took exactly 17 minutes and 32 seconds. Marcus had calculated this duration with mechanical precision, ensuring that every being who had cheered for his daughter's death would experience the full weight of their choices. The massive structure folded in on itself like a dying star, its crystalline walls shattering into billions of razor-sharp fragments that caught the alien sun's light. Like scattered diamonds, standing in the center of the devastation, Marcus cradled his daughter's body against his chest. Emma looked peaceful in death, her small form unmarked except for the single wound that had taken her life. The stuffed rabbit she had treasured lay nearby, somehow untouched by the destruction that had consumed 70,000 alien spectators. Ambassador Crystal hung suspended from a twisted support beam, his lower body crushed but his upper torso still functional enough for speech. His compound eyes tracked the human's movements with a mixture of terror and fascination. In his 3 centuries of life, he had witnessed the conquest of 47 different species. None had ever responded to defeat with such methodical devastation. Why? Crystal gasped, his breathing becoming increasingly labored. Why destroy everything? Why not simply escape? Marcus looked up from Emma's face, and the ambassador recoiled from what he saw in those green eyes. They held no satisfaction, no sense of victory. Only the cold emptiness that comes after purpose has been fulfilled. Because you needed to understand, Marcus replied, his voice carrying across the ruins with unnatural clarity. You needed to learn what you had awakened. The sound of approaching aircraft filled the air as Dominion response teams finally arrived. Marcus had disabled their communications for precisely this long, allowing enough time to complete his work but ensuring that witnesses would remain to carry the story beyond this world. 12 assault craft descended through the smoke and debris, their energy weapons charging as elite Dominion soldiers prepared for a difficult extraction. These were veteran troops who had pacified dozens of worlds, trained to handle any conceivable threat. They expected to find a single human hiding among the wreckage, traumatized and easily captured. Instead, they found Marcus standing calmly in the arena's center, his daughter's body in his arms, surrounded by a perfectly circular area of destruction that extended exactly 2 kilometers in every direction. Every building, every vehicle, every trace of Dominion presence within that radius had been systematically eliminated. Impossible, breathed Colonel Vextar as his scanning equipment fed data to his tactical display. Our intelligence indicates humans are a pre-spaceflight species with primitive technology. How did one individual accomplish this level of destruction? Marcus looked up at the hovering aircraft and smiled the same cold smile that had terrified Ambassador Crystal. Colonel, I assume? I am Dr. Marcus Chun, former professor of quantum engineering at the University of New Geneva. I have a message for your superiors. The assault teams maintained their positions, weapons trained on the human below. Vextar activated his external speakers, his translator rendering his words into human language. Surrender immediately or face immediate termination. No, Marcus replied simply. You're going to listen and you're going to remember every word, because you're going to carry this message back to your Dominion leadership. He gestured to the ruins around him with his free hand. This is what happens when you make a human parent watch their child die for entertainment. This is your first lesson in human psychology. Colonel Vextar's tactical computer was still processing the destruction readings. No single individual should have been capable of this level of systematic demolition, even with captured weapons. The energy expenditures alone should have been beyond any biological entity's capabilities. Here is lesson 2, Marcus continued, his voice carrying clearly through the dust-filled air. Humans are persistence predators. We evolved by chasing prey across continents until it collapsed from exhaustion. We don't give up. We don't forget. And we don't forgive. One of the assault craft moved closer, its pilot attempting to get a better targeting solution. Marcus tracked its movement with casual interest, as if watching a particularly slow bird. Lesson 3. Humans are tool users. We see everything in our environment as a potential weapon. The chair you sit on, the air you breathe, the gravity well of your planet, the fusion reactor that powers your cities. Everything can be weaponized by a sufficiently motivated human. The pilot of the closest assault craft suddenly realized that the human was holding something in his raised hand. Not a weapon, but a small metallic device that was counting down from 10 seconds. The pilot's training kicked in as he attempted evasive maneuvers, but Marcus had already calculated the craft's probable response patterns. The device wasn't an explosive. It was a quantum resonance transmitter that Marcus had constructed from components salvaged during the arena's destruction. When activated, it would send his message to every communication relay within 50 light-years, carried on the same quantum frequencies that the Dominion used for their fastest-than-light communications. "Final lesson," Marcus said, his voice now being broadcast across half the galaxy. "Humans are social creatures. We form bonds that transcend individual survival. When you kill one of us, especially our young, you create something your species has never encountered before, an enemy that values vengeance more than life." The transmission carried more than just Marcus's words. It included complete technical specifications for quantum weapon design, detailed intelligence on Dominion military capabilities that Marcus had observed during his captivity, and most importantly, the exact coordinates of every human refugee camp and slave facility within Dominion space. Throughout the galaxy, human survivors who had spent years believing themselves alone and forgotten suddenly received proof that they had not been abandoned. Along with that proof came detailed instructions for turning any Dominion technology into weapons of massive destruction. Colonel Vexstar watched his communication array overload as the human's transmission propagated through the galactic network. "Stop the broadcast," he ordered his technicians. "Jam all frequencies." But quantum entanglement communication couldn't be jammed, only intercepted. Marcus had ensured that his message would reach every corner of the galaxy, carried by the Dominion's own infrastructure. "Too late," Marcus said, lowering the transmitter. "The message has been sent. Within 72 hours, every human in captivity will know how to turn your own technology against you. Your ships, your weapons, your cities, all of it becomes our arsenal." He knelt beside Emma's body and gently closed her sightless eyes. "You wanted to see what humans do when cornered? You wanted entertainment from our pain?" He stood slowly, his movements carrying the weight of absolute finality. "Congratulations. You've just witnessed the birth of the human resistance." The assault teams opened fire simultaneously, their plasma weapons converging on Marcus's position in a coordinated strike that should have vaporized any biological target. But Marcus had spent his final minutes constructing one last surprise from the arena's quantum shield generators. The plasma bolts struck an energy barrier that Marcus had tuned to their exact frequency, reflecting the weapon's energy back at their sources. 6 assault craft exploded in brilliant fireballs as their own weapons destroyed them. The surviving pilots watched in stunned disbelief as the human walked calmly through plasma fire that should have killed him instantly. "Send word to your leadership." Marcus called out to the remaining ships as they retreated to a safe distance. "Tell them that Dr. Marcus Chun is declaring war on the Galactic Dominion. Tell them that this war will end when every human slave has been freed, when every arena has been destroyed, and when every being who profited from our suffering has paid the price." He picked up Emma's body once more and began walking toward the ruins of what had once been the arena's shuttle bay. "And tell them that this war will be fought with the one weapon they cannot defend against: human creativity applied to the problem of causing maximum damage to your civilization." "Colonel." Vexstar watched through his tactical display as the human disappeared into the wreckage, carrying his dead child toward whatever remained of the shuttle facilities. The colonel's hands trembled as he began composing his report to Dominion High Command. The galaxy had always been a dangerous place, filled with hostile species and unpredictable phenomena. But for the first time in their 3,000-year history, the Dominion faced an enemy that fought not for territory or resources, but for something far more dangerous: the memory of a murdered child and the absolute certainty that some acts demanded infinite vengeance. In refugee camps across 40 systems, Humans looked up at alien stars and smiled for the first time in years. The message had been received. The resistance had begun, and the Galactic Dominion was about to learn why apex predators had once ruled. Small blue planet on the galaxy's outer rim, the war for human freedom would be fought with weapons the Dominion had never imagined, by soldiers who had already lost everything that mattered to them. It would be the galaxy's bloodiest conflict, and it would end with the human species' emergence as the most feared name in galactic history, all because they had made one father watch his daughter die for entertainment. Marcus opened his eyes 12 minutes after his daughter's death. In that brief span of time, his mind had performed calculations that would have required supercomputers on his homeworld. Every structural weakness in the arena, every energy pattern from the restraint systems, every behavioral quirk of the guards he had observed over 3 years of captivity had been catalogued and weaponized. The quantum restraints around his wrists operated on a principle of molecular interference, creating energy fields that disrupted the electromagnetic bonds in biological tissue. But Marcus had spent months studying their function during transport between facilities. The Dominion's arrogance had led them to use the same restraint model throughout their empire, never considering that a captive might possess the knowledge to exploit their weaknesses. The key was resonance frequency. Marcus began to vibrate his hands at precisely 847. 3 Hz, a frequency that created destructive interference with the restraint's containment field. The guards, focused on the arena floor where cleanup crews were removing Emma's body, failed to notice the subtle blue sparks beginning to dance around the human's wrists. Ambassador Krikstal was engaged in animated conversation with Warchief Garn about the next event when his bioscanner emitted a soft warning chime. He glanced at the readings and froze. The human male's vital signs had shifted into patterns completely outside known biological parameters. His heart rate had dropped to an impossibly slow rhythm, while his brain activity showed synchronized gamma waves across all regions. "Guards!" Krikstal called out, his voice carrying a note of concern. "Something is wrong with the human specimen." But it was already too late. The quantum restraints shattered with a sound like breaking crystal. Marcus rolled to his feet in one fluid motion, his hands now free to implement the plan that had crystallized in his mind. The nearest guard, a Vorthan security officer with natural armor plating, turned toward him with weapon raised. Marcus moved with speed that defied the alien's understanding of human physiology. His hand closed around the guard's throat before the creature could trigger its plasma weapon. 3 years of forced labor had stripped away every unnecessary gram of fat and built his muscles into steel cables. The Vorthan's neck snapped with an audible crack. The plasma rifle was in Marcus's hands before the guard's body hit the floor. His engineer's mind had already mapped the weapon's operation through months of observation. Dominion energy weapons were designed for maximum intimidation, which made them inefficient but powerful. Perfect for what he had in mind, the VIP box erupted into chaos as aliens scrambled for exits and emergency transmitters. Marcus's first shot took out the main power coupling for the arena's shield generators. His second destroyed the communication array that connected the facility to the orbital defense network. Each shot was placed with surgical precision, targeting systems he had studied during every transport, every forced march. Every moment of apparent compliance, War Chief Garn rushed toward Marcus with a traditional Brutarian war blade, his massive form moving with surprising speed. The weapon could cleave through starship armor, but Marcus was no longer thinking like a civilian engineer. 3 years of survival had awakened instincts that evolution had buried under civilization's comfortable layers. Marcus sidestepped the charge and drove his elbow into the nerve cluster at the base of Garn's skull. The Brutarian dropped like a felled tree, his weapon clattering across the VIP box floor. Marcus claimed the warblade and the alien's ceremonial explosives, his movements becoming more fluid and predatory with each passing second. Ambassador Krikstal cowered behind an overturned table, his 4 arms trembling as he attempted to activate an emergency beacon. "You don't understand," he chittered in broken human language. This facility holds 40,000 beings. You cannot escape. Surrender now, and your death will be merciful. Marcus turned toward the ambassador, and Krikstal's compound eyes registered something that would haunt his dreams for the few minutes he had left to live. The human's face showed no rage, no hatred, no emotion at all. It was the expression of a predator that had moved beyond anger into something far more dangerous. Absolute purpose. Escape? Marcus asked, his voice carrying an almost conversational tone. Who said anything about escaping? The arena's main power grid exploded in a cascade of sparks as Marcus's sabotage took full effect. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red shadows as the crowd's cheers turned to screams of panic. The Deathstalker, confused by the sudden darkness and chaos, began attacking anything that moved in the arena below. Marcus vaulted over the VIP box railing, landing on the arena's edge 40 meters below with a bone-jarring impact that would have crippled most beings. His human joints, evolved for endurance, running, and climbing, absorbed the shock and propelled him forward into the panicking crowd. The Dominion had never encountered anything like a human in berserker state. Their understanding of violence was clinical and controlled, based on territorial disputes and resource competition. They had no concept of what happened when a species with 3 billion years of pack-hunting evolution decided that causing maximum damage was more important than survival. Marcus moved through the fleeing crowds like a force of nature. The Warblade carved through alien flesh and chitin with equal ease, while captured plasma weapons eliminated targets at range. But his true weapons were the arena's own systems, turned against their creators with an engineer's intimate understanding of structural failure. The support columns that held up the upper tiers were designed to withstand earthquake and orbital bombardment, but they had a critical weakness where the gravitational compensators interfaced with the main structure. Marcus planted Garn's ceremonial explosives at precisely calculated points, then triggered a cascade failure that brought down entire sections of seating onto the fleeing crowds below. The Deathstalker, driven mad by the noise and chaos, began hunting indiscriminately through the ruins. Its venomous stingers found targets among the alien spectators who had cheered for Emma's death, dispensing the same fate they had enjoyed watching inflicted on an innocent child. Ambassador Krikstal tried to reach an emergency shuttle platform, crawling through debris with his lower arms while his upper limbs clutched a communicator. "This is Ambassador Krikstal," he gasped into the device. "Code Crimson at Arena 7. The human specimen has escaped containment, requesting immediate orbital strike authorization." A human hand closed around the communicator and crushed it to fragments. "No," Marcus said quietly, looking down at the wounded ambassador. "No one calls for help. No one escapes. Everyone who was here when my daughter died stays here until this is finished." Krikstal's compound eyes tracked upward to the human's face, and he saw something that made his ichor run cold. Marcus Chen was smiling, but it was the expression of something that had moved far beyond the boundaries of sanity into a realm of perfect, calculated madness. "Please," Krikstal whispered. "I have offspring. I was simply following orders." Marcus knelt beside the ambassador, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "So did my daughter. She was following orders too. My orders to be brave, to be strong, to trust that her father would protect her." The smile never wavered. "I failed in that duty, but I can still teach the galaxy what happens when you hurt a human child." The explosions began at the arena's base, working their way up through the structure in a precisely timed sequence. Marcus had calculated the resonance frequency of the building's harmonic oscillations, turning the entire facility into a tuning fork that would tear itself apart. As the arena began its final collapse, Marcus picked up Ambassador Krikstal and carried him toward the center of the destruction. The alien would live just long enough to understand that humanity was not a species to be enslaved or entertained with. They were apex predators who had temporarily forgotten their nature, and the galaxy was about to receive a very educational reminder. The massive arena stretched across 3 kilometers of polished obsidian, its crystalline walls rising into the purple-tinged atmosphere of Zarian Prime. 70,000 alien spectators filled the tiered seating, their various forms creating a tapestry of scales, chitin, and bioluminescent patches. The Galactic Dominion's most prestigious entertainment venue buzzed with anticipation as the weekly gladiatorial games prepared to begin. In the VIP section, Ambassador Crickstyle of the Zephyrian Hegemony gestured with his 4 arms toward the arena floor. His compound eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he addressed his guest, a hulking Brutarian warlord whose tusks had been inlaid with precious metals. Today marks a special occasion. War Chief Garn, Crickstyle clicked in the universal trade language. We have acquired something truly exotic for our entertainment. A breeding pair of the newly discovered species from the Rim worlds. The humans, they call themselves. Garn's massive head turned toward the diplomatic box where 2 figures sat in energy restraints. The male appeared to be in his 30s, with brown hair and intense green eyes that surveyed their surroundings with calculating intelligence. Beside him sat a small female child, no more than 8 years old, who clutched a worn stuffed animal against her chest. Her father's arm strained against the restraints, trying to reach her. The specimens were captured during our expansion into Sector 7 Alpha, Crickstyle continued. Their primitive vessel was transporting refugees from their homeworld. Most were processed for labor, but these 2 showed interesting biological markers. The child displays unusual neural activity, while the male demonstrates remarkable physical resilience. The arena's massive screens flickered to life, displaying the upcoming match details in dozens of languages. The crowd's excitement reached fever pitch as they read the description. Primitive human spawn versus Colossian Deathstalker. Dr. Marcus Chen felt his heart hammering against his ribs as he read the display. 3 years ago, he had been researching quantum mechanics at the University of New Geneva. Now he sat chained in an alien Colosseum, watching as his daughter Emma was selected for execution disguised as entertainment. "Daddy!" "I'm scared," Emma whispered, her small hand finding his despite the restraints. Marcus forced his voice to remain steady. "Remember what I told you about being brave, sweetheart. No matter what happens, I need you to remember that you are loved and you are strong." The Colossian Deathstalker emerged from the arena's depths through a massive gate. Standing 4 meters tall on 6 segmented legs, the creature resembled a nightmarish fusion of spider and scorpion. Its carapace gleamed like black metal, and its multiple eyes tracked movement with predatory precision. Venomous stingers dripped acidic toxins that hissed when they hit the arena floor. Emma was led into the arena by hovering guard drones, their plasma weapons trained on her small form. The crowd's cheers reached deafening levels as betting odds flashed across personal devices throughout the stadium. The child looked impossibly small against the vast expanse of the arena floor. Marcus watched in horror as his daughter was pushed forward into the killing ground. The restraints bit into his wrists as he fought against them, his scientific mind already calculating force vectors and stress points. 3 years of forced labor in the Dominion's mining colonies had hardened his body, but the quantum restraints held firm. The Deathstalker's attention locked onto Emma immediately. It had been starved for days to ensure an aggressive response. The creature's hunting instincts engaged as it detected the fear pheromones radiating from the small human. Its mandibles clicked in anticipation as it began its approach. Moving with the fluid grace of a perfect predator, Emma stood frozen in the center of the arena, her stuffed rabbit pressed against her chest. The crowd's noise became a thunderous roar of approval as the Colossian circled its prey, savoring the moment before the kill. Several Dominion officials placed last-minute wagers on how long the child would survive. Ambassador Crickstyle leaned forward in his seat, all 4 eyes focused on the arena. "Notice how the human offspring displays the species' characteristic emotional paralysis when faced with superior predators," he commented to his guests. "Their fight-or-flight response appears completely inadequate for survival." The Deathstalker reared up on its hind legs, toxin glands pulsing as it prepared to strike. Emma looked up at her father in the diplomatic box, her young face showing a mixture of terror and heartbreaking trust. She mouthed the words, "I love you, Daddy," just as the creature's stinger descended toward her small form. The strike was swift and precise. The Colossian's venomous tail pierced through Emma's chest with a wet, decisive sound that carried clearly across the suddenly silent arena. For a moment, time seemed suspended as the small human form went rigid. Then collapsed to the obsidian floor. The crowd erupted in a mixture of cheers and disappointed groans, depending on their betting choices. The Deathstalker chittered in satisfaction as it withdrew its stinger and began circling the motionless body, instinctively ensuring its prey was dead before feeding Dot in the VIP box. Marcus Chen's world shattered into fragments of rage and grief. The quantum restraints sparked and smoked as his muscles bulged against them, his entire body radiating a fury that seemed to heat the air around him. His green eyes, which had shown intelligent calculation moments before, now burned with something far more primal and dangerous. Fascinating, Ambassador Crixtel observed, noting readings on his bioscanner. The adult specimen's stress hormones have increased by 700%. His neural activity is showing patterns we've never documented in any species. What Crixtel didn't understand was that he was witnessing something the galaxy had never encountered before. A human parent watching their child's murder. 3 billion years of evolutionary programming, refined through countless generations of struggle and survival, suddenly focused into a singular point of absolute determination. Marcus felt something snap inside his mind, not breaking but transforming. The restraints that had held him securely for months suddenly felt different against his skin. His breathing slowed to an almost meditative rhythm as his engineer's mind began processing the arena's structure, the guard positions, the energy signatures of every weapon in sight. The Dominion had made their first fatal error in dealing with humanity. They had assumed that because humans showed emotional responses to trauma, they were weak. They failed to understand that human emotions weren't weaknesses to be exploited, but evolutionary tools that could transform an ordinary person into something extraordinarily dangerous. As the crowd began to settle down and the cleanup crews prepared to remove Emma's body from the arena, Marcus Chen closed his eyes and began to plan. The aliens had just declared war on the wrong species, and they would learn what happened when apex predators decided that survival was no longer the primary objective. The Colosseum Deathstalker chittered once more in triumph, unaware that it had just signed the death warrant for every living being in the arena.